Imagine a place on our planet utterly inhospitable to human life. A realm of crushing pressure, impenetrable darkness, and profound silence. 142 meute beneath the ocean is unforgiving surface, a dive fest 10 abyss. What is discovered there would not only defy logic but transform his very existence, a miracle of the Virgin Mary, unfolding in a solitude so absolute, only God himself could bear witness. But before we plunge deeper into this extraordinary tale, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below right now, telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. I'm always amazed to see how far the miracle of the Virgin Mary resonates across the globe. Most people are completely unaware that job like Michael Carson's even exist. At 36, Michael was one of the ocean's unseen laboratories, a commercial dive specifically, a saturation dive. He was the kind of man who routinely ventured into the sunless depth, living for weeks on end in pressurized chambers, his body infused with helium and oxygen, his voice emerging thin and high-pitched, almost like a character from a distorted cartoon. For 14 grueling years, this had been his life. 14 years they spent descending to depth where the sheer pressure could flatten a car. 14 years they defied the odds, always returning to the surface alive. Until that fateful day in March. HIS Temporary Home was a colossal platform, a titan of steel and concrete, anchored 380 km off the Louisiana coast. It plummeted 142 meute to the seabed, a behemoth churning out 45,000 barrels of oil daily. Michael had already endured 3 weeks aboard, with just one more to go before he could return to his solitary apartment in Houston, and 2 those brief, almost ritualistic weekly calls with his doctor, Emily, that invariably stretched to 5 or 10 agonizing minutes. And they pick up the phone, as tiltedly, Dad me with his first share. How was school? Good. And your math test? It was okay. Then, the inevitable, you have to go do homework. Okay. And they always end with, I love you, Emily, a declaration often made with silence, followed by a kie, bye, Dad. It had been 3 years since the divorce, 3 long years of attempting to fatter from an unforgiving distance, 3 years of what felt like abject failure. Jennifer's word showed in his mind, sharp and clear from when she signed the papers, you chose the ocean, Michael. Don't blame me when our doctor grew up not knowing you. She was right, and they knew it. But down here, submerged at the ocean's floor, those painful truths could be muted. Here, there was only work, enveloping darkness, and the profound, muffled silence of the water. It was, in a twisted way, easy. On the frigid morning of March 14th, at precisely 6h47 du matin, a sharp knock rattled the door of the saturation chamber. Carson, we've got a problem. Michael, an early rise by Abby, was already awake. He asked, what kind of problem? The supervisor's voice was urgent, leak in the main pipeline expansion joint need immediate visual inspection. Michael pushed himself up from the narrow bank. Beside him, James, a 25-year-old on his very first offshore contract, slept on, blissfully an hour. Youth. Michael cut straight to the point, when do I go down? As soon as possible. Production is compromised. Those words production compromised were the industry's magic incantation. Each hour of halted oil flow translated into hundreds of thousands of dollars vanishing. Give me 15 minutes, Michael stated. He dressed methodically, silently. Thermal suite, multiple layers of protection. The brutal cold at 142 meute was relentless, at chill that pierced even through a heated diving suite. The commotion stirred James awake. We've got a leak inspection div, Michael informed him. The young div's face pallid. 142 meute, Michael added, that is where we are, James. You've never been that deep. Aimé James's gas. It's just more pressure. Your body can't tell the difference. It was a blatantly. The body always knew. Every cell of Michael's being screamed that they didn't belong in such an alien, crushing environment, a realm where humans were fragile, temporary intruded. But James didn't need to hear that truth. In the locker room, they encountered Rodriguez, a 50-year-old Mexican welder, a father of 3 living in Texas, whose face always seemed too old a smile despite enduring 12-hour shift in conditions that would send most people packing within a week. Careful down there, Hermano Rodriguez caution, making the sign of the cross, a familiar, automatic gesture Michael had witnessed countless times. Then, the welder extended a small, thin chain, from which hung a tiny metal medallion. Take this et urgé, or lady. My wife makes me carry it all the time. For protection. Michael hid the medallion a silver disc bearing the image of the Virgin Mary. I don't need that, Rodriguez stated flatly. I've got $52,000 worth of equipment keeping me alive. Rodriguez merely smiled, tapping his own chest. The equipment takes care of the body, my friend. This, he affirmed, takes care of what truly matters. Thanks, Buno, Michael replied, gently returning the medal. Michael noted the flicker of disappointment in Rodriguez's eyes but felt no remorse. Superstition, et dismissed it nothing more. At precisely 7h23, Michael and James climbed into the diving bell, a trimeta metal capsule, their fleeting sanctuary in the impending abyss. The heavy door closed shut, a profound sound of metal sealing against metal. Above them, the crane began a TS slow, deliberate descent, lowering the bell into the deep. Inside, the silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic sound of James's breathing and the faint hiss of the radio. Diving bell, this is surface control. Passing 40 mt. System normal, Michael reported back, his voice calm. 70 mt. 110. James was palpably tense, his fingers white-knuckled around the safety handle. The first times are always the worst, Michael offered, more to puncture the oppressive silence than from an irreal empathy. James broke the key. How do you handle it, going down like this, into the dark? So deep? Michael paused. How could he possibly articulate that confronting the vast, cold ocean was infinitely easier than confronting his own fractured life? That the crushing darkness outside the bell felt less menacing than the darkness festering within him? You get used to it, he finally replied, leaving the true answer unspoken. With a soft, almost imperceptible thud, the capsule settled on the seabed. 142 mt below the surface. 20 atmosphere of pressure, the mind-bending equivalent of 20 elephants balanced on every single square centimeter of their body. Control preparing for exit. Leak approximately 30 mt northeast of your position. Michael and James began their intricate ritual of gearing up, helmet secured, umbilical attached dose vital au supplying breathing mix, power, communication, their very lifeline. Michael's helmet light cut through the gloom. James nodded, his eyes betraying stark fear. The capsule door is head open. Michael always exited first. The water was an inky black, intensely cold. Visibility was a mere 3 mt at best, the helmet lights carving out weak cone of yellowish illumination that seemed only to amplify the eerie, dancing shadow. Jesus, James breathed over the radio too, emerged into the void. Michael activated his wrist compass and propelled himself forward. James trailed close behind, their umbilicals pulling out from the rail within the bell-like vital core. The seabed here was no pristine, flat desert. Decade of oil operation had scarred it, leaving behind a haunting landscape of corroded metal structure, discarded cable, long-lost tools, and even an ancient diving helmet, now fully encrusted with alien marine life. Michael navigated this ghostly, metallic graveyard. Each discarded object held a silent story, a testament to someone who had worked here, plunged into the darkness, and later returned to the surface or didn't. There. James's voice crackled, his light beam fixing on a point red. The platform structure loomed from the darkness like the skeletal remains of some technological leviathan, pipe attic à ancient tree trunk, concrete support the size of small building. And there, precisely where James pointed, was the unmistakable, ominous gleam of leaking oil. Control, visual on the leak, Michael reported, swimming closer. The main pipeline indeed bore a visible crack, oil slowly hemorrhaging, rising in viscous, wally spiral through the frigid water. But a closer inspection revealed something far more sinister. Control Michael's voice sharpened, the leak isn't confined to the expansion joint. The pipeline show multiple fractures. This isn't normal wear and tear. This look like a catastrophic structural failure. Attends silence on the radio. Maintain a safe distance and continue documenting. Michael activated his helmet camera, slowly circling the grievously compromised section of pipe. That is when the world around him convulsed. A crack. Loud. Metallic. He felt it before his mind registered the sound, a violent vibration shuddering through the water, a sudden, alarming shift in the massive surrounding structure. A section of the pipeline groaned, displacing itself perhaps only 30 cm but it was enough. Michael instinctively recoiled, pushing to move away, but a sharp, terrifying tug stopped him. HIS umbilical the singular lifeline tethering him to the diving bell was snared. He thrashed, trying to swim backward, but the line held firm, pinched cruelly between the displaced pipe and a concrete frame. Control, we have a problem. Umbilical compromised, he yelled. The response was a garbled, static chopped mess, amen. Position. Cindy. Control. Repeat. Then, only white noise. Michael frantically tapped his helmet communicator. Nothing. The radio was dead. HIS gas darted to the gas mixture gauge on his wrist, and a cold dread slittered down his spine. The number were plummeting. This shouldn't be happening. The umbilical was designed to provide a continuous, endless stream of breathing mix from the bell unless it was damaged. 70%. 65. 60. Michael fogged to remain calm, panic, et knew, would devour his precious oxygen faster than anything else. He struggled towards the point where his umbilical was trapped, pulling, twisting, trying every conceivable angle. The robust hose refused to yield a single millimeter. The pipe had shifted, forming a perfect, unyielding vise of metal and concrete. 55%. 50%. Okay. Okay, think he muttered to himself, forcing his mind to focus. He scanned the abyssal landscape. He needed a tool, anything that could act à l'ouvrage, something to force the monstrous pipe back into place. HIS helmet light swept across the seafloor, illuminating a chaotic sprawl of debris, ancient equipment, rusted skeletal structure. Then he saw it perhaps 15 meters away a tantalizing pile of abandoned tools from some forgotten operation. 45%. Michael Strand, attempting to swim toward them, but umbilical cincheto, holding him back like an unyielding leash. He managed perhaps 5 meters before the line became completely rigid. Not enough. They were just out of reach. The tools remained infuriatingly beyond his grasp. 40%. He wrestled again with the umbilical, his effort futile. It was completely, irrevocably punched. He even attempted to disconnect the umbilical from his helmet a cruel irony, as the connector were engineered for safety, designed not to come off easily. 35%. Michael paused, forcing himself to take slow, deliberate breath, to think with brutal clarity. He mentally cataloged this rapidly dwindling option, way for rescue. But without communication, how long before they even realized this predicament, let alone found him? Or, cut the umbilical and activate the emergency reserve? He reached for the backup valve, twisting the control it was locked. He gritted his teeth, turning hardy. Nothing. The backup valve was completely, utterly stuck. Oxydation, extreme pressure the reason didn't matter. It was inoperable. 30%. No, he whispered, the word echoing in his helmet. There was no option to. With the backup valve useless, severing the umbilical meant certain death. And staying tethered, waiting for the compromised airflow to finalize as, was equally fatal, just a slower, more agonizing end. 25%. Michael's gas drifted upward, towards the surface, 142 meters above, a realm utterly invisible in the crushing, impenetrable darkness. E looked from his hopelessly trapped umbilical to his steadily dwindling gauge. 20 percer. And for the first time in 14 grueling years working beneath the unforgiving ocean, Michael understood, with chilling, absolute clarity, there was no escape. He stopped fighting. There was nothing left to do. He simply floated, suspended in the inky blackness, his helmet's floodlight illuminating nothing but shimmering, drifting particle, dancing like ghostly snow. Emily. His doctor's name escaped his lips, a mere whisper in the vast silence. 9 years old, with her mother's brown hair. When was the last time he had truly seen her, not just visited, but genuinely seen her? 2 months ago, a weekend in Houston. Jennifer had allowed him to take Emily to the park, but the girl had spent the entire time glued to her phone. When he dropped her off that Sunday night, Emily had simply climbed out of the car without a backward glance. I love you, he called out, but she hadn't responded. And now, he would never have another chance. 3 percer. Michael closed his eyes, his voice cracking, if anyone is listening, anyone at all he failed. A father, a husband, a human being. But please be shocked out, take care of her. Take care of Emily. She deserves a world he couldn't give her. 1 percer. HIS regulator emitted a strained gasp. Michael drew one final, ragged breath. He opened his eyes, and then he saw it, something on the sand, just a few meters away, glowing. It was impossible. There was no other light source down near his helmet's floodlight, and they weren't even pointing in that direction. Yet there it was, a soft, ethereal, pale blue luminescence à hallucination, surely, born of hypoxia and despair. But Michael stared. The object was partially buried in the seabed, only a small section visible, yet undeniably glowing. With the last, fading fragment of his consciousness, Michael pulled. The umbilical, his tormentor, held him fast, always trapped. But perhaps if he stretched, if he reached, extending his arm, finally straining to tear absolutely me almost. A little more. He touched it, then dug. HIS gloved and furiously pushed away sand, silt, and decades of accumulated sediment. HIS fingertip brushed against something solid. He pulled. With a gentle resistance, it came free from the seabed, a small statue, perhaps 30 cm tall, utterly encrusted with algae and marine growth. Yet, unmistakably, it was a statue. Beneath the layer of sea life, a fin blue mantle was still visible, a serene face, and clasped in a posture of prayer. The Virgin Mary. Michael clutched the statue. He didn't understand why. He didn't even think. He just held her, and with the last vestige of his breath, he whispered, please. Then, click. A sound. Mechanical. Impossible. Michael's eyes snapped to his wrist gauge, 0 perce. Still 0. Yet, something had fundamentally shifted. The emergency valve, the critical backup reserve that had been jammed solid, had unlocked. Oxygen, pure and life-giving, flooded his regulator. Michael gasped once, twice, a third time, air rushing into his desperate lung, life surging back in overwhelming wave. He coughed, shocked, then breathed deeply again. Impossible. Utterly, absolutely impossible. Valve don't just unlock under crushing pressure. They don't instick themselves. They certainly don't jam at the precise, critical moment of impending death. Michael stared at the small statue of the Virgin Mary in his trembling hand. Even beneath the thick marine encrustation, the face was perfectly preserved, gazing back at him, serene and compassionate. He glanced at his gauge again. The emergency reserve held perhaps 15 perce barely enough to reach the capsule, if he moved directly, if he wasted not a single second. Michael looked at the tether, still binding him. There was no more time, no more strength, to try and free it. He drew his knife, slashed the umbilical, and instantly, freed from the hoses wrecked, he began to float. Michael spun slowly in the darkness, utterly disoriented. Where was the capsule? Without the umbilical to guide him, without any reference point, without communication, his mind raced. How far had they swum? 30 meters from the bell to the leak? Or 40? In which direction? The current could have turned him completely around. The darkness was absolute. No point of reference whatsoever. 10 percer. Et chose à direction, based purely on instinct, on a desperate trade of hope, on nothing at all. Et began to swim, the statue of the Virgin Mary still clutched tightly in his hand. Et couldn't let go, et wouldn't let go. 8 percer. Come on, et urged himself. Et pushed through the crushing darkness. Nothing. Only black water, an occasional piece of debris, but no bell. 6 percer. Et alter his course minutely, continuing to swim, and then, et saw them, lights. Fin, almost imperceptible, but lights. The capsule. 4 percer. Michael poured every last ounce of his remaining strength into his stroke. The capsule entrance loomed into view, TS door open, a beacon waiting in the void. 2 percer. Et burst inside, slamming his fist onto the emergency close control. The door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and Michael collapsed onto the metal floor of the capsule, still clutching the statue against his chest, gulping the pressurized air in ragged, desperate gasp. Alive. Impossible, but undeniably alive. Latte, Michael gazed out the cafeteria window. The ocean dead day was placid, a mirror surface calmly reflecting the clouds above. When asked how he survived, his honest answer was simple, he don't know. But I'm alive. On Michael's last day before returning to land, Rodriguez soft him out. He heard what happened down there and said, news travel fast. The statue you found? May I see it? Michael retrieved it from his locker and brought it back. Rodriguez accepted the statue with profound reverence, turning it gently in his hand, studying the serene face. Our Lady et murmured softly. He paused, then looked at Michael. The medal he offered you refused it. I know. I'm sorry, Michael replied. No need to apologize, Rodriguez said, a gentle smile gracing his lips. She found you anyway. The Virgin Mary always found those who need her. He departed, leaving Michael with no word to offer in return. The helicopter ferried Michael back to land on a Thursday afternoon. 28 days offshore, 4 weeks suspended over the ocean, 4 weeks disconnected from everything. Houston assaulted is sensé, hot, loud, chaotic. After the profound silence of the rig, Michael took a cab to his apartment, a small, one-bedroom space with minimal furniture. He spent so little time there that he never bothered to truly make it a home. He dropped his backpack to the floor, then carefully unwrapped the statue from the towel tucked at the bottom. He gazed at it for a long moment before placing it on the shelf beside his TV. It looked utterly out of place, adorned with marine incrustation and dried seaweed, incongru among his books and DVDs. Yet, it was there. Michael picked up his phone, staring at it for several minutes, grappling with it in a battle, before finally dialing. Jennifer answered on the third ring. Michael, hey, are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Just got back. Oh, good. A pause. I wonder, can he talk to Emily? She's at the mall with her friends. She'll be back at 6. Okay. Could you ask her to call me? Sure, do you know how she is with these things? I know. Another silence stretched. Then, Jennifer Eston shifted, Michael, did something happen? He looked at the barnacle-crusted statue on his shelf. He almost died, he confessed. Jennifer gasped. What? At the bottom of the ocean. Equipment failed. He ran out of oxygen. Oh my God, Michael. I'm fine. I'm here. How did you survive? She stammered. It's complicated, Jennifer. He just wanted to talk to Emily. To say that I love you, both of you. To say I'm sorry for not being the father she deserve. To say that his voice broke, unable to continue. To say that when he truly believed he wouldn't make it and finally managed, all he could think about was her. Jennifer was openly weeping on the other end of the line. Michael sat on his couch for a full, silent hour. Then, he looked at the statue on the shelf. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for saving his life, for granting him a second chance, for reminding him that he had something, Someone, to come back to. All of them. Everyone. 3 weeks later, Michael returned offshore. New shift, same platform. The work endured, it always did. But something within him had irrevocably shifted. And now called Emily every 2 days short conversation, yes, but profoundly real ones. He spoke of his work, she of her school. Slowly, gradually, they began to log together again. One day, a new div arrived, a nervous 24-year-old on his first contract. In the cafeteria, he approached Michael. Are you Carson? He asked. I am. I've heard stories about you. What kind of stories? That a statue of the Virgin Mary saved you. Michael took a slow sip of his coffee. So, it was a miracle, the young div pressed. Michael ponded the question, one he had asked himself a dozen times. I don't know, Michael answered honestly. But Amir. The kid nodded slowly. I guess that is what matters. I think so, Michael agreed. That night, Rodriguez stopped by Michael's Carter. Got a minute, he asked. Sure, Michael replied. Rodriguez stepped inside, holding something in his hand. He offered Michael a small cloth pouch. Michael opened it. Inside lay a metal medallion. Our Lady, Rodriguez, he can't Michael began, but Rodriguez cut him off. It's for you to remember. Remember what? Michael asked. That someone is watching over you. Rodriguez walked to the door, then paused, turning back. And Carson? Yes. I'm glad you came back from the ocean, he said, a genuine warmth in his voice, and to your doctor. One weekend in Houston, Emily came to visit him. 13 precious hours they spent together, watching movies, sharing pizza, talking about everything and nothing. Emily explored the apartment, still slowly growing comfortable in her father's space, her gaze landed on the shelf. Dad, what is this? She asked as Michael walked in from the kitchen. She was holding the statue of the Virgin Mary, still partially covered in the deep sea encrustation Michael had never fully cleaned. He found it at work, at the bottom of the sea, Michael explained. Emily nodded, examining the piece, turning it carefully in her hand. It's beautiful. She gently placed the statue back on the shelf. Are you going to keep it? She asked. I am. Why is it special? Michael looked at his daughter, now 9 years old, growing more like Jennifer every day, smart, curious, beautiful. It is, he said softly. Very special. Why? She pressed. How could he possibly explain? How could he articulate what had transpired 142 meter beneath the surface, the absolute darkness, the suffocating fear, and then, the impossible? Was it a miracle? A coincidence? Michael knew he would never know for certain. But this much he understood with profound clarity, in that harrowing moment, in the loneliest place on the entire planet, when there was no one left to witness, when it was just him and the endless, black abyss, he was not alone. And now, if you've stayed with Michael's incredible journey this far, I have one simple request for you, type the word oxygen in the comments below. Because that is precisely what the Virgin Mary returned to him when all hope seemed extinguished. I want to witness how deeply this story resonated with your heart. And every time I see that word in the comments, I'll know that one more person out there believes that miracle still unfold, even in the darkest, most impossible corner of our world. Finally, a heartfelt thank you to the first 20 incredible individuals who shared their face in the comments section. And remember, The next 20 people to leave a comment on this video will also get a special shootout in our next upload. Thank you for being a vital part of this growing community of faith. If Michael's story truly touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next profound narrative. Share your own miracle story in the comments, or simply share this video with someone who desperately need a renewed sense of hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.